Hi, I'm Carrie. You are listening to Stat Sisters, where my sister Erin and I discuss all things nursing. This is our first episode. Yay! So thanks for joining us, and let's get started. So, good morning.
Good morning.
How are you today?
I'm sniffly. How are you?
You're sleepy?
No, sniffly.
Oh, sniffly. Yeah, you're so sniffly. I couldn't even understand what you were saying.
I'm sorry. I blame my sons.
Well, what is on the agenda today?
We've got a basketball game this afternoon for my oldest daughter, and made some pumpkin cookies for the bake sale for that. And then I work tonight, so I'll be getting a nap in there somewhere. What about you? What you doing?
Well, I am not working today.
Lucky.
But I got 4 hours of sleep last night working on my school stuff. Which you know because you were texting me.
I know. I couldn't believe you were up that late. You're never up that late.
I know. The old lady was awake.
I was like, oh my good golly.
But I have scouts later tonight, but I haven't done my lesson yet. So I need to do that after this, I think.
Oh, you'll be great. You'll wing it.
All right. So we're going to go ahead and do our topics if that's okay.
Let's do it.
Are you ready?
I'm so ready.
Okay, awesome. So the first topic of our first podcast.
Woo woo!
We probably should have picked a better one, but whatever. Okay, so perceptions of other units. So I think that means, because we did this list quite a while ago,
Right.
but perceptions of other units, like for example, like a mother baby nurse has a certain perception of a labor and delivery unit.
Right.
So, maybe we should talk about what our backgrounds are.
Oh, that's a good idea.
We need to, full disclosure, so people know where we're coming from.
They're like, what the heck do these girls even know what they're talking about for? I'm a waitress. No, I'm just kidding.
That is totally legit.
And I thought, hey, why not? Why don't you go first? Because yours is really impressive, and then mine can kind of just be like, oh.
Oh, whatever. So we chose Stat Sisters because we're still doing that, right? Stat Sisters.
Yes, totally, definitely.
Okay.
We've embraced it.
Okay. So we chose Stat Sisters because we are like awesome sisters of a sort, and we'll probably talk more about that in future podcasts.
Yes, we have to save something for later.
We are legit sisters in some ways, but also we are sisters in nursing.
Yes.
And so we thought Stat Sisters was going to be great, and you can follow us on Twitter at Stat Sisters, and you can visit our website, statsisters.com. So it's a good thing that you agreed to that because I already bought the domain.
Well, that's really good. I won't be changing my mind then.
So, anyway, I'm a mom of 5 children, and for my nursing career, I started out in med-surg, and I did that briefly, and then I went to mom baby briefly, like a year, and then I went to mom baby because I wanted to do women's health. I really wanted to get into L&D, and so I worked there for a year, and then I've been in OB ever since, like L&D. Excuse me.
For many,
I did
many
used
years.
to go to pediatrics. I floated there like about once a week while I was in the first 4 years of my L&D experience. So I do have some pediatric background, and that was fun. And I don't know if I don't want to take the whole podcast talking about all my other stuff.
Well, we'll talk about how amazing I am. So,
Okay.
I too.
We'll save the rest for later.
Yes, there you go. We have to leave them hanging. So there's like they keep coming back for more. So I'm also a mama. I have 6 munchkins running around, and they keep us pretty darn busy. In addition to that, I'm also a nurse, and as well, I started out in med surg. Actually, did a little bit of nursing director role in an Alzheimer memory care assisted living unit before that for a few years. And then I've done med surge. I do some telemetry. And then in the last few years, I switched over. Probably in the last 5 years, I started transitioning to women's and children's because that's really where my passion is. And so I've done postpartum and pediatrics most recently, which I just absolutely love. And but I still kind of dabble in all the others because I like to keep things fresh, and it's good to get a change of pace. And sometimes it's nice to have patients who can actually speak to you like a grown up. So so it's kind of fun because
I
I get to use
know.
all those different parts of my nursing brain still. So that's me in a nutshell.
Yes.
And my favorite color is red.
And and your favorite that's so random. So I know your favorite color is red and yellow,
Yes.
which is perfect for a nurse.
Yes. I know. We're just gonna keep going.
You just need
Not
to
brown.
start liking brown. Yeah, brown.
Nope, nope, nope. I'll stick to those.
So Erin goes all over the hospital. So she has insight pretty much from every angle of nursing, which is good. That'll be good as we go through these topics. So let's get to our first
Let's do
topic,
it.
perceptions of the other units. And so um, I'll start with my perception of L&D when I was a med surg nurse, and I wanted to be an L&D nurse. But our L&D nurses didn't float to med surg, so they were kind of like the untouchables.
Right, kind of
They,
isolated.
yeah. And I had told some of my colleagues, I was just a brand new nurse, and I wasn't that young, but I looked really young, and so people thought of me as kind of like the baby on the block. And they really kind of dissuaded me from wanting to go over to OB because they said that they were divas, and I was too nice to be like a bratty diva L&D nurse. Little did they know, I'm
Mwahaha.
like the queen of that now. But um, so I'm interested, like what your first impression of the L&D unit was.
Honestly, I think it was kind of about the same because I was always interested in women's and children's, whether it was pediatrics or the labor and delivery, mother baby section of it. And I guess, well, and I dabbled a little in, I did support NICU a little bit, but I guess I just have some background in that. It wasn't ever one of my primary units, but I kind of felt the same way. They felt like they were a little distant because it is such a subspecialty and more of a critical care unit in the especially on the labor side, that there really isn't crossover. You don't get nurses who most of the time who support the adult care units as well as a labor and delivery unit, or even mother baby. A lot of times they stay within mother baby, labor and delivery, NICU realm. And so it was kind of like viewing a prize from afar. I wanted to get into it, but being a new nurse, of course, I had to get some just basic experience under my belt, and I felt like they were like a whole different breed, and it was just really kind of a. It almost kind of. I didn't say wouldn't say scared me away, but I felt like, well, I don't know, maybe I can't. Maybe I'm not going to get there. Maybe, it felt hard to make that transition. Like I didn't know how to make that leap. Whereas in the adult floors, it seemed a little easier to go from, med surge to tele or a step down unit or a surgical floor or something like that. So that I think I felt the same thing. And then once I started, because I've never done labor specifically, when I started in mother baby, I think in a way, I found that some of those perceptions were true because it is very different. It's highly a female population. Aside from our physicians, we don't have a lot of males other than maybe like RTs or, scrub techs or anesthesia. But on the floor, it's largely female. So it was actually a different feel when I started working on those floors. But yeah, it was different coming into it. I think with a med surge background versus going straight into mom baby or labor nursing from nursing school and having that be my original viewpoint, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, it totally makes sense. So that reminds me of like a labor nurse's perception of like every other specialty, and it's like, ew.
Exactly. And that part was totally true. They're like, you want me to do what? I'm sorry. I don't do that.
Yeah, it's so funny. Like, the panicked pushing of the mom that's pregnant up to L&D from the ER, and like they're in the reverse, like, oh, somebody complained of chest pain, call a code.
Right,
Like,
right. I
it's,
mean, we've all gone through the same training initially, but, obviously we go into our subspecialties, so we don't really, a labor nurse isn't really looking at stroke protocols and things like that. But you're absolutely right. There's a definite um, ideal, on the floor, and they're like, I don't know how to do that. That's outside my wheelhouse. And we just, as nurses in general, we don't like to be uncomfortable. We want to be in control. We want to know what we're doing and what's going on, and that's how we're safe and our patients are safe. And so when those situations arise, yeah, when a labor nurse or mom baby nurse is presented with something that might maybe be somebody else's realm, they do get a little panicky.
yeah, it's so funny. At one of the hospitals I worked at, we didn't have ICU nurses in L&D, and so if we had a patient that was ICU and pregnant, it was like a huge deal, and we would have to take the patient to ICU and house them there. And then that we'd either, like, if the patient was stable OB wise, then we would just come like a couple times a shift and check. But like during a labor in the ICU, it's so stressful.
Oh my
It's
goodness,
not
I could
stressful
only
now,
imagine.
but back then it was so stressful. And it's so funny, um, being the labor nurse, and like after the delivery, it's really just, checking fundus, making sure everything's okay, no bleeding. And the uterus freaks out ICU nurses. They're like, we can't check a fundus.
I
You
know.
need to show us what to do.
I know. It's like, come on. All the systems are still the same. But I know with my last pregnancy, ooh, here's a little glimpse at me. Um, Teaser. I had some cardiac complications, and I was on bed rest for the last, gosh, what was it, Carrie? Like, I think from like 27 weeks on or something like that. So
Yeah, it was a long
it was
time.
a long time. So anyway, my heart was being naughty, and baby was fine. But every time I went anywhere, whether I went to mom baby for, labor for like stress tests, or NSTs, or if I went to the ER because I was having heart complications, irregardless, nobody wanted to touch me. And it was my cardiologist he was okay, but he was kind of like, I don't know about this whole baby thing and this whole placental perfusion thing. And I was worried. I'm like, is my blood pressure too low? And he was like, oh no, you're fine. I'm like, no, I mean for the baby. And he's like, oh, but the ER nurses, I'd show up and they were like, can't you go up to the labor floor? And I'm like, no, I'm here for me. I'm here for my heart. And so they were nervous to touch me. And when I would go to the labor floor for baby, they, of course, see my history. And they actually had like my name on the wall up at the front desk where they checked in, where you check in patients. Um, and they would like they were drawing straws for who had to work the day I had my scheduled C-section.
Oh my
Because they were
goodness.
so
That is
nervous.
so
They
lame.
were so nervous about my heart. I went in for my last NST. I kid you not. I was like a wanted
Oh
poster.
my
I went
gosh.
in for my
You
last
were you were the
NST.
watch patient.
I
We have
know.
those, the watchers.
I went
Oh
out on
my
Christmas
gosh.
Day. My husband was working in the ER, and so I went up to labor on Christmas Day for my last NST because I delivered the 28th. And I had no idea that my name had been on the wall. And the girl who was checking me in, at that time I just worked a different floor in the hospital, and she says, "Oh, you're Erin." She says, "We have your name up here because we were all checking the schedule to see who works when you're scheduled to come in." And I was
Oh my
like,
gosh.
"Oh." So I experienced that as a patient, definitely, where nobody was happy. The labor nurse would come and check on me in the ER, and they'd run a strip, and then they would just peace out, and they were like, "Okay, I'm done." So I just made everybody
Oh my
uncomfortable for a
gosh.
good 6 months. So it's
Well,
true.
I think that's a perfect example.
Well,
So let's move on, because and I want everyone to know that this is not a OB podcast. This is a nursing podcast, but we just happen to spend 14 minutes talking about
So if you're
L&D.
not
But
OB, just hang in there. We'll get to you.
Exactly. And we do naturally talk about babies and birth a lot because we've had a lot of that
Yes,
between
it's
the two
true.
of us.
We have 11 children between the two of us. So even not as nurses, our mama is going to come out there.
Yes.
All right, moving on.
So let's move on. Okay, so I get this because I'm always pushing nurses to get certified.
Oh,
And this is
yes.
one of the concerns that I have, not that I have, but that are presented to me a lot is if certification a scam just to get money, or is it a valid thing to do as a nurse? So why don't you give me your opinion about this?
Oh, and I was going to ask you to go first. Okay. Honestly, I don't know. I am not extra certified in any of the subspecialties that I've ever worked in. Um, Primarily because I wouldn't say I felt it was a scam, but I felt like it wasn't worth the time and the money to me, either in like monetarily for my pay increase, or because most of the times the employer will reimburse you, for the cost of your certifications if you pass. So it's not like you're losing money that way, but just, is it worth that effort and the stress to go through that testing and to keep up that certification in that field? And when I was in, I think it kind of depends on the field, honestly. When I was in med surg units and more just kind of I don't want to say run of the mill, but quote normal nursing, I didn't really feel the desire to do it. But I feel when you're in a specialty unit like an ICU or labor and delivery, NICUs, even ER, I feel that they actually carry some merit, and I think that it's kind of worth it, not just if you get a pay raise from your hospital or a bonus or whatever, but I think you see the payout in your job and your education because you're paying more attention, you're learning these things, you're putting that time in to study and to keep your certifications present. I think you have a more vested interest, and I think it's kind of like you're doing your CEUs. You're in a continual learning environment above and beyond what your normal job would be. And so I feel in those specialty care units that they can be pretty beneficial. I know they also help um, with insurance a lot of times for that the hospital carries on the nurses. The higher percentage of nurses that they have certified, they actually can pay less in insurance because, chances are the more educated your nurse is, the less likely they're going to make a mistake, I guess, is kind of what they're getting at. But so I'm kind of
Yeah,
50-50. Depend to me, I guess my nutshell answer would be depends on your specialty. How's that?
I think that's fair. I think that's fair. I definitely don't think it's a scam, although when all my CEUs are due for, and then I have to pay the fee,
It
I'm
feels
I'm
like
kind
it.
of like, ugh, yeah.
You're like, wait a minute.
So I have so we average one certification for both of us. I have two, and it's a lot to keep up with, but because I just like keep track really well. Most hospitals give you a ton of CEUs
Right.
throughout the year, and if you just keep up, like I don't really end up paying for very much on my own. And if you go to like a conference every 1 or 2 year, I mean every 2 or 3 years, and you just keep track of your hospital CEUs, you pretty much have it covered. You just have to make sure you're getting the specifics that you need. But
Right.
I agree with you, Erin. The nurses that are certified, they do keep up on the literature and the new standard of practices a lot better.
Oh, I think so,
And
definitely.
so yeah, so they are safer nurses, and all the studies have shown that have looked at hospitals that have certified nurses that they provide better care, that like the patient outcomes are better.
Well, and it,
And
it stands
so
to reason. I mean, it makes sense.
a lot of nurses are hesitant, especially I have found because I've done a lot of work around the certification issue, and a lot of tenured nurses, like they're like 10, 20 years
Hmm.
in, they're like, I'm not certified, so like, do you think it's going to make me a better nurse to have this piece of paper? And it's not the piece of paper, in my opinion, that makes us better, but that continual learning.
Yeah.
I don't go to an OB-GYN that's not board certified.
Right.
Like, and I might go to a family practice doctor that's not board certified. I mean, honestly. But I definitely, if I'm going to a surgeon, I want a board certified surgeon.
Well, yeah, exactly. You want that little gold star, after their name. I know if I had continued, I just recently came back to the mother baby from pediatrics just a few months ago, for all you little listeners out there. But if I had continued in the pediatric vein, then I was beginning to consider doing my certifications, and that of course you have to log a minimum number of hours, and which is, for my position, it was about a 2 year. I mean, you could do it one, but I felt your knowledge base and everything was more apt, closer to two, because I felt that that would have been beneficial to me and my patients, because just, well, pediatrics is such a large field. First of all, you're carrying everything from neonate up to adolescent, but once again, you have so many subspecialties and little nooks and crannies, and I thought that that would really be helpful. So then, of course, the good shoulder angel and then the bad shoulder angel inside me, the bad one's like, oh, I don't want to do testing. I don't want to study. I'd see a coworker doing it and I'd feel like guilty.
Well, I think it's important for your professional development because I think it helps, especially when you've been a nurse for many years and you kind of are stagnant. It gives you something else. It's like the next level.
Right, I
So I
agree.
think it's something. I'm glad that you're considering
I know.
it. But and I do agree. Like 2-3 years into that specialty, you don't have to study that much because you're doing it every day.
Right, right. And hopefully by then you have a nice firm solid foundation. I think here in Idaho, I don't know if it changes nationally. Honestly, Carrie, you might know about that, if it's a statewide um policy or if it's a national standard. But irregardless, I know some nurses go into whatever field it might be, ER, med surg, ICU, and their units, depending on the facility, may be pushing for those certifications. And I feel that after a year, I feel that's kind of premature. I feel, number one, if you're not going to be staying in that field for a long time, I feel like that's a large investment. But also, I feel that's pretty early on. A year in a new unit, you're really starting to just get your sea legs under you. And so I feel challenging in doing certifications. I almost feel like it's a little too early for that. I feel like I would like to see the nurses wait closer to 2 years, before they do the certifications. I think it just works better. So, yeah, I wouldn't say scam. I would just say maybe it's a little extra, a little over the top in some units, or maybe for certain individuals, if there's somebody who likes to, change jobs fields every few years because they like to continually, do something new.
All right. So as you're preparing for night shift tonight, because you're
Yes.
working 11 to 7,
Yes, I am.
usually you work 12 hours, but I know you just picked up to help someone out
Right.
because you're so nice.
Like, because I am so darn nice.
So, what are your thoughts and your experiences napping on night shift?
Oh, I dream about it all the time.
Is it not allowed in your hospital?
It is not allowed in my hospital, if for a
Even on
nurse.
your breaks?
Honestly, on my breaks, I don't know. I haven't. I don't remember what the employee handbook says on it. To be honest with you, I would think my inclination would be your break is your time. Um, and I know I've done it on my break, so I really hope it's okay. Because I've done it, because there's times, we all have those nights, and you night shifters know that out there know exactly what I'm talking about. No matter what your best laid plans are for sleeping, maybe you couldn't sleep, or maybe you did sleep and it's just not enough. To me, I do okay sleeping on night shifts, but it doesn't come naturally to me. It's always a very concerted effort. And so there's some nights where it's just really a struggle. And I can keep pushing through, but sometimes if I can just go catch 15 minutes on my break in the break room, I'm so much more refreshed. So I certainly have done that. I know our CSTs, our scrub techs, and of course, like anesthesia and our physicians, they all have sleep call rooms. So they're allowed, because they're being paid essentially to be available. They're not doing direct patient care, their entire shift. So they're paid to be available, and so they can go sleep, and for them that's kosher. But for the nurses, the expectation when we're not on our breaks is, of course, that we're working. Um, and so that gets a little hard because we've all had those slower shifts where your ratios are maybe really low and your patient's sleeping for like 6 hours. And, maybe there's you guys, two of you could share an assignment, and it's definitely tempting. So, but I've done it on my breaks. I will own that. What about you?
Well, I worked at like four different hospitals, and so there's a varying policies about this. One hospital I worked at, actually two, it is not allowed ever, not on your break ever. And I understand, like, of course, it's not allowed when you're supposed to be working.
Right, get that.
And you can, get terminated for sleeping while you're supposed to be watching patients. I get that. But on your breaks, I think you totally should. Like, all
Right.
the studies show, like, I should probably start putting links because I'm like, all the studies show, but all the studies that I have looked at about this, because this is another topic of interest to me, having worked so many nights, I mean, so many like years of night shift, um, it's good to sleep a little bit.
Oh, absolutely.
And there's like different suggestions, like how long you should sleep and everything. But I know I would have never made it through being pregnant so often on night shift if I
Right.
wasn't able to sleep
That
because you're
little
just so tired.
that power nap can make or break you, man.
Yeah. And so my favorite um, situation that we had was at one hospital. We were able to group our lunch in our one of our 15s together, and
Ooh.
so you could take, you could eat your little snack or your food or whatever, and then take a legit 20-30 minute nap, and it was great.
That is awesome. So how did that work? Did they have like couches in the break room, or did they have sleep rooms? How did they
Yes.
facilitate
Yeah,
that?
so they had a couch because they encouraged it,
Well,
and
yeah.
so you had a couch, and there was a futon, and like honestly, like sometimes we would just say, because they have like the visitor couches inside a lot of patient rooms,
Right.
if they're not double, if they're private rooms, and so we would just like take a sheet and a blanket in there and go to sleep.
Yep, yep. I've done that and
And
just wiped it down afterwards. I didn't leave any messes
and
for housekeeping. I love my housekeeping staff.
I know, environmental services, come
Oh,
on.
I'm sorry. That's true. Environmental
Yeah, don't make a
services.
mess for them. But no, anyway, it was so helpful because you just feel so much more alert. Like you can actually, not make mistakes with medications and,
Right.
errors in nursing.
Focus on your
So
patients rather
I'm
than
a,
focus on you.
yeah, instead of like just like, and plus, instead of like sitting there drinking caffeine and ruining your health and eating Cheetos all night, which I have done, Red
Right.
Bull and
Oh,
Cheetos.
I'm a night shift grazer. That's how I stay awake. I am one of those people who just grazes the whole shift to help keep me like
I mean,
stimulated.
taking a nap is a lot healthier than
That's true.
stuffing your face with Cheetos
Right.
all
And then
night.
you're like nauseated by the end of your shift. Or you've had enough caffeine,
Yeah.
you go home and you can't sleep. You're exhausted, but you just lay there and your mind's racing. So, no, I agree. I
Yes.
think, obviously if you're supposed to be working, no. I mean, I'm envious of the positions, like the physician and who can just cut out and be like, okay, let me know if my patient wakes up or let me know if my monitor goes
Hmm.
off. I would love I would love that.
I
But that doesn't
know.
really work with nursing care at the bedside at least.
I know.
So,
And they're not planning on going home to sleep either. They're going right to the clinic in the morning.
right, right. Totally different
So
circumstance.
I am not jealous of that.
No, this is true. I will definitely say that. I'm just jealous when they get to go lay down.
Yeah, I'm a little jealous of the like thousands of dollars too. Over
Well,
those.
okay, we're not going to go there. I don't know why.
That'll be in a later podcast.
Well, that's a whole other topic. Uh,
Okay.
Anyways.
So I think that we advocate for this, right?
Oh, I'm
Is this our
definitely.
official
I'm a
podcast
fan.
stance?
I'm a big fan. Hashtag sleep on night shift. Wait, but be safe about it. No,
Yeah,
I don't
not
see
when you
anything
have
wrong with it.
patients.
I think
No.
especially if you're off the clock, your time is your time. Obviously your breaks are paid typically. So I guess there could be an argument made for that. But certainly when you're on your paid breaks, I don't see anything wrong with it. And in fact, I think it's beneficial. I know I've benefited from it multiple times and times that I was feeling dizzy or nauseated just because I was so tired and fatigued. I'm definitely not focusing on the right things. And so if I could take that little break, refresh my body, refresh my mind, get through the next 3, 4, 6 hours of my shift, through that 2 a.m. to 5 a.m. That's like my witching hour. If I can get through that
Oh
little
yeah.
gnarly window, then I'm doing so much better.
No, yeah, by 5 o'clock, like your circadian rhythm is like boing.
I
It's like time to wake up.
I know, I love
Just
it.
don't look at the sun when you leave, because
I
then you'll be
know.
awake.
It's so true. The sun starts coming up, and inside you're like, yes, and your body's like, no, I want to sleep.
I know you're supposed to wear sunglasses from inside to your car,
Oh, that does not
like
happen.
yeah, to help you out. But one time it was my first year of nursing, and me and Lisa were living together. Lisa's one of my other sisters, and we we were like kind of switching childcare, but like our schedules had overlapped, and I was like up all stinking day with her kids,
Oh,
and I didn't mean to be, but I was. And by the time I got to work, I was so tired. And I remember asking the charge nurse, I was like, she just looked at me and was like, "Oh my gosh, you look like trash." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm
uh-huh.
so tired. I have to sleep. I think I might kill somebody." It was terrible. And she didn't get me in trouble. She didn't send me home. She sent me to the conference room, and I slept under the table for 20 minutes. And then I went and got report.
There you go. I'm usually curled up on the floor by the lockers.
But I'm like, thank goodness, like that charge nurse was just like sympathetic and
Right.
understood that it wasn't like I was out partying. I just
No,
couldn't sleep
exactly.
that day.
Well, and I think that you kind of touched on another subject that goes along with it is the policy, whether it's a unit policy, hospital policy, but just the mindset in allowing. Excuse me, I'm sorry, I'm so sniffly. Allowing nurses, night shift nurses specifically, to be able to call in and just be like, "Hey, I could not sleep today. Life happened. I don't know how that goes. Do we give them an extra sick day a year? How does that work to be able to accommodate that? Because otherwise, what kind of culture are we influencing them to come in when they're sleep deprived? They're not going to be at the top of their games. Good nurses make mistakes in the best of situations, let alone when we're setting them up for failure like that. When they're coming in through no fault of their own, they tried to rest, they couldn't. Maybe their kids had, their sitter canceled because they were sick, something like that. We've all been in those situations. Maybe your kids are throwing up, so you can't take them to the babysitter. So, like, what you did, Carrie, you just stay up, you make do, you life happens. And so, what are we encouraging when we're telling those nurses, you need to still come to work, even though, you have been awake for 24 hours at that point? Um, is that a culture of safety? Is that are we advocating for our patients really? Or are we just kind of being hard nosed with, the attendance policy? So, maybe like a subtopic of that is, should night shift nurses have additional sick days, or is should that attendance policy be not more lenient, because you certainly do have to have rules, because I'm sure those individuals who would take advantage. But if we really want a safe environment for our patients and what's best, should we maybe take that under advisement sometimes and give those night shift nurses a break when they show up to work and they're just trashed, and that they're not going to do a good job. And like you said, it's not because they were out partying or through any fault of their own. So, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, because I'm telling you, I've definitely had day shifts where I didn't really sleep at all, but it is just so different
Oh,
when it's night
absolutely.
shift.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I've gone to day shift one let's just say less than the amount of sleep I should have had. And having the sun up, and of course the whole rhythm of night shift versus day shift is also very different, with physicians rounding. And so with that added stimuli, that certainly helps you stay awake. And it is to going off of, I don't know, 3 or 4 hours of sleep on a day shift is very different than doing that, trying to do that on a night shift. It's just
Mm.
it's like night and day. Totally
That's
unintentional.
funny.
And right now we just lost our seventh listener.
We don't even have any listeners yet.
Dang
That's
it!
funny.
Well, I was counting like our family.
Oh yeah, the ones that are forced to listen.
The ones that were making it. And there goes another one.
Okay, well, I think it's time to talk about our sponsors. We have none officially, but we want some.
We do.
So, this podcast is brought to you by Nurse Certification, paying a lot of money for alphabet soup behind your name. All right, and then I think, do you have any sponsors for us today?
Um, you know, here over at St. Mungo's where I'm currently employed, we no, I'm just kidding.
I'm employed there too. That's so funny.
I will say I'll just plug my work. They are the most fabulous hospital ever. I love St. Mungo's. We hardly ever kill anybody. They're just great.
Oh,
No, so yeah,
well,
let's see.
okay.
Nurse certification.
Very good.
We're also sponsored by the National Nightshift Nurses Association. They they're remember their motto, hashtag sleep on night shift.
Very, yes. And brought to you by Cheetos and Caffeine. Cheetos and Caffeine keep nurses awake on nights.
This is so true.
All right, I think it's time to get to our fake questions from fake people.
Ooh, I love fake questions from fake people.
So these are these are actually real questions, but they're from like generic people because I've just had them asked so many times. But you can ask us real questions by going to Twitter at StatSisters, or you can email us at statsisters@gmail.com, or you can go to our website statsisters.com.
If they're real questions, we will still use them in our fake questions segment, so don't you worry. So do we get code names?
Well, I think we could have code
We
names
can have code names.
to protect the innocent because we also are very HIPAA compliant on this
Oh
podcast.
yes,
So
we heart HIPAA. They should be another sponsor because we just love them so much, and Jaco. But we're not going to go there.
This is the question. I'm going to read the question
Okay.
to you, and you can answer it. How about that?
I get to answer
I
it.
will be graduate. Yeah, you answer it, and then I'll do a follow up.
Oh, okay.
All right. I will be graduating nursing school in August. Yay!
Woo-hoo!
Good for you. Oh, it's October. So this already happened to this fake person.
Or maybe like
Um,
next August. Maybe they're just really excited.
Oh, yeah.
Let's go with that.
Do you have any interview tips?
Hmm. Honestly, I used to kind of just wing it, to be honest with you, before my first nursing interview. All my other jobs, because I'm kind of a talker and I'm fairly personable, and so I just kind of always felt fairly confident, and I just went in there and I was charismatic, and a lot of times, really, I got the job. And so I never really even thought about like practicing or doing questions until other students that I was going to school with were talking about that, and I'm like, oh, that's a really good idea. And then I started thinking like,
You're like practice for the
I
interview.
know, I'm like, if I'm the only one not practicing, then obviously I'm not getting the job. And so I Googled. I went on Google actually and like said pediatric nurse interview questions, or whatever was fitting for the job I was applying for, and I practiced that way, and I thought it was silly because you read the questions, and of course a lot of them are very similar to the norm, the questions that we hear in every interview. But And of course, there's going to be ones. There's the people who like to like throw you the curveball question and think outside the box. And sometimes you're interviewing one on one. Other times it's a panel. But irregardless, to actually, even though I thought I knew the answer or I thought I had a good example, to just feel silly and actually sit there and practice to myself and saying it out loud and telling whatever story I was telling to prove my point of how amazing I was or why they should hire me, to actually practice it out loud, just like practicing a speech, it made me that more confident. I felt like I knew those. I didn't feel like I was stammering and trying to come up with something, kind of off the cuff. Um, and I think as a licensed individual, as an RN, they expect that from us. They expect that level of forethought, to be put into our questions and to actually be able to speak to our experience. Um, and so I think I'm rambling here, but I think my point was I just started looking at other sources and then I just started asking around, what interview questions have you had? And, you usually you're not going to call your potential employer and ask, but other people who may work at that who may that who work at that organization or fellow colleagues or whatever. And to me, that was helpful to actually physically run through it, think of the situations that you wanted to be able to recall when you were under the hot seat and super nervous.
Well, I've interviewed quite a bit for different things, and I think I'm pretty similar to you. But my tips my tips are from the one that's interviewing standpoint, because I've interviewed a ton of people and I've hired a ton of people. So some tips: please wear proper shoes. Don't wear flip
Oh,
flops.
good golly. Yeah. See, I didn't even think about that. That to me is just like obvious.
I mean, and yeah, I know it does seem obvious, but dress like you're going to. Please don't wear scrubs. Of course, if you do wear scrubs, that's not like a deal breaker, but you're going to a professional interview, so dress
Right.
professionally.
I think it's okay. Is it okay to wear scrubs if you're going like let's say you work in the hospital and you're going from unit A to unit B, and a lot of times you schedule those fellow directors will like, well, just come in after your shift or come in on your lunch break. So because I have worn scrubs in those situations and I felt like it was completely appropriate, but not when I'm just coming
I
from
think
home.
that's more, yeah, I think that's more appropriate. If you can change, it's good, but definitely don't dress like you're going to the club,
Right.
like you're going
Oh,
dancing.
please, yes.
Dress professionally. Don't talk bad about your former employer or current employer. We don't want to hear
Right.
it,
Even if it's true.
because it's like, yeah, and we know, like, I know all the hospitals. I know a ton of different people that work around Houston, and Houston's like a huge area, but I know the places that aren't that fun to work at. I already
Right.
know, but I don't want a negative Nelly
Right.
working for
Right. You
me.
can always spin it positively or just completely circumvent that portion. Maybe you are completely miserable and maybe your current director is a total dragon and that's the only reason you're leaving. But, you can always spin it differently and not focus on those bad things. Just it's not a good fit. You saying something as simple as that, I think is um, completely fine. I don't see that because I've also done a lot of interviewing and hiring and I don't see that as a deterrent whatsoever. But yeah, when people have these big long personal stories, it's just very awkward, especially in a professional environment. It's amazing, whether you live in a big city or a little city, the medical world is very small, and so a
It
lot of
is.
people, and so it's just awkward when you do that. So just yeah, I agree. You might be completely right. You may be totally justified, but it just doesn't reflect well on you. So find a way to speak
It
positively.
doesn't. And you don't know, like, I had somebody come in that we knew, a mutual person. They didn't know that that was like my very good friend,
Oh,
and they were like talking about her, and I was like,
awkward.
nice.
That's always weird. Does HIPAA apply to interviews? Guess what I heard about you?
I just didn't say anything, but I was like,
Oh,
so you don't like her, and I really like her, so I don't know if I'm gonna like you.
right.
Um, on the other, and like, I'll piggyback on the personal stories. Like, we employers cannot ask questions like if you're married, children, pregnant, things like that. They're protected. Religion. please do not volunteer because it makes our job harder. Like, we don't want to
Right.
know. We don't want to know if you're pregnant. If we can't tell you're pregnant, keep it to yourself. Like,
Right. And I don't think you should feel guilty about
because,
that. I think some people feel like they're being dishonest or hiding, but they're not. And we shouldn't be hiring you either way based on your pregnancy or lack of pregnancy or your obligations to having
yeah, I don't
children or being single without children. That should have no bearing on whether you can do your job or not.
know. And it really doesn't for me. I don't, because I think anybody could become pregnant or have a, it, like, if you're pregnant, it has no bearing to me. And also, like, anybody could come to work and then get a brain tumor or have a sick
Right.
parent, or their life is totally
Right.
unpredictable. So I don't care if someone's pregnant, and I don't want that in my head that you, I don't want to be influenced either
Right.
way by that. Like, it maybe I'll be more influenced because I'm like, yay, babies, or maybe I won't. I just don't want that.
Right.
And then also, like, don't bring up, like, when I ask, like, tell me about a time that you overcame a obstacle. I'm talking about work. I'm not talking about your divorce.
There's
I'm not
no.
talking about
Oh, no. Are
that.
you serious? For real? People have
Yeah.
done
Oh my
that?
gosh, Erin, you would not. Oh my
Oh,
gosh.
I've been
Like,
lucky. I've
people.
avoided
Oh, and
that one.
try not to cry during your interview. It is not good.
Oh, good
Because if you can't
heavens.
get through an interview
Without crying.
without crying, it is not good. Don't talk about those patients that make you feel all the
No,
feels.
nope.
Because I don't want to see you. It's so
Get
awkward
control first.
when you're just
Bring
like,
that story up
she's
5 years later.
crying. Yeah.
Now, that's not saying we're not going to cry on our podcast, but we're not interviewing here. No, I think that would be, oh, yeah, that would be incredibly awkward. And I would wonder if the person's like emotionally stable. Are they able to do the job and the stressors, that go along with it? And, it's not like losing a patient, but no, oh, good heavens. No,
Yeah.
let's just, yeah, a big no to all
Yeah.
of that right
Don't do
there.
it. Don't do it. And then the last, like, my last piece of advice, please, 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 please do not ask how the interview
Oh,
went.
yes, very tacky.
It's
And it shows lack of
so
confidence.
tacky. And I'm not going to tell you the truth if it was bad because I am not rude and mean.
Right?
And, like, honestly, HR would be really mad at me if I did that, so I can't.
Yeah,
But I also can't say that it was good. What if I'm interviewing 10 people for that one
right.
position? Like,
No,
I can't really
I
tell
will
you.
say that
So
sometimes
don't ask.
employers do volunteer that. Like, we thought this went really well. Or, obviously, if you go in for a half an hour interview and it stretches to an hour and then they give you a tour of the unit, that's usually a really good sign. And so some employers will volunteer, hey, we'd like to see you for a follow up. But depending on HR rules, sometimes they can't, like Carrie was saying. And so don't feel disheartened if that doesn't happen. And certainly don't ask. That's kind of, it lacks confidence and professionalism. Some departments are better HR at getting back to you really quickly, and others aren't. But if the employer volunteers it, then I think it's totally fine to discuss it. But minimally, I wouldn't be grilling them. I would just say, "Oh, thank you, I appreciate that," or "Yes, I would be very interested in that," and then drop it at that point. Affirm their interest in you, and then close it there rather than jumping on that desire to start grilling them about salary and when can I start.
Oh, I know. Don't talk money. Don't talk money in that first interview. Only talk money after they offer
Yep.
you.
And then play ball. Then go for it.
Do you do you send thank you cards or thank you emails?
I never have. Apparently, you're a lot. Do you?
Yeah,
Oh,
yes,
see, you're
I
nicer
have,
than
and I
I am.
think
You have
it's
better manners.
I, well, I think it's a southern thing,
Eh.
and I think definitely culturally, like in the South, if you don't, then we're like, what? You're
I've
rude.
never even see. This is amazing. I've never even heard of this, and I've only been in California and Idaho. So, give a little background there. Which Carrie, we both were raised in California, but anyways, so I've never even heard of it. So as an interviewer, no, interviewee, I've never sent a thank you card or email. And I've never received one as the management who's done the interview. I've never ever received one. I do follow through and like touch base, and I'm definitely all about put your face in there. Go introduce yourself, even if it's an electronic system. Bring your resume, shake their hand, give them your name so you're a face, you're somebody that they're going to remember, and definitely do the follow up. So that I'm certainly a proponent of, but no, I've never even heard of this, so now I'm feeling extraordinarily rude. But apparently I've still gotten a
Well,
job.
I not definitely not everyone does it, but it is really common here.
I can see that.
And I know like one colleague of mine, she if you don't send her a thank you card, she is just or a thank you email at least, she's like, huh. I guess she didn't want it.
Wow. See, and that should
I mean, we
that is not like in the expectations. Like, do people know?
I think it is definitely I mean, we still hire people that
Well,
don't,
good.
but especially the higher up like that you're going, if you're doing
Right.
a staff nurse, it's definitely not a deal breaker, but if you're trying to get something higher than a staff nurse, like on the on the ladder, yes,
Wow.
it is a professional courtesy that you do.
Wow, I I'm learning I learned something new today.
Oh, well, that brings us to what we've learned today. So,
Oh, good segue.
I've learned that certification, although expensive, is not a scam.
I would agree with that.
What have you learned?
I could I concur.
That's fancy
I
talk.
know. I'm pulling out all my big $100 words. I have learned that napping on night shift, when appropriate and done safely, on not when you should be doing patient care, that we believe that is a good thing and that you can actually have better patient outcomes and a safer outcome actually. And like Carrie was mentioning, that there's studies that back that up. So listen up, employers. Get us a couch.
I know, get with the program here. Oh, nursing in the news. I don't think there's been much nursing in the news, but there is a story that's a few months old that keeps popping up, and it's the VA, the Veterans Administration, new APRN rules that they are trying to get. I mean, they're going to be put in effect, but they have to put it out there for public opinion first because it's government.
Right.
So, have you heard about this?
I've not. I'm sad to say I don't really follow it very much. But
Well, it's
with
my
your
thing.
certifications, it is your thing. I am a baccalaureate prepared nurse for all of those out there, and Carrie has surpassed me, so she is a little more fancy pants than I am. She's more initials than I do. So
My initials are cumbersome, and I don't really like them, but I still write them every time.
I'm sure once
um,
you get them, oh yeah.
but so basically, there's about 23 states that have full practice authority for advanced practice nurses, and that includes midwives, nurse anesthetists, which I can not really say, so I'm going to CRNA, and then
CRNA.
clinical nurse specialists, which is what I am, and then nurse practitioners, and that means that they can practice independently of a physician. They work in collaboration with physicians for sure, but they can work independently. And so that's less than half of the United States. And the Veterans Administration, of course, is in every state and other territories. And they're saying, regardless of what state that VA hospital or clinic is in, that they want the APRNs to have full practice authority, which this is wonderful for the
Yeah,
VA.
that's huge.
It's wonderful for patients because the VA has a huge problem of being able to service all the people that they are
Oh,
responsible
absolutely.
for.
Yeah,
So,
and if they could increase their mid-level providers, the NPs and what that would make a huge difference in their patient impact.
yep. So, unfortunately, the medical lobby is very against this, even though
Oh,
uh, the drama
darn
continues.
it.
They're there's been many studies about particularly nurse practitioners, but all advanced practice nurses, if their care is like equitable to physician, and in these studies it is safe or safer, and patients prefer in many cases nurses, advanced practice nurses, because they practice in a different way. And
They do.
so
It is.
their domain is like pretty much the normal healthy patient or the like non-acute patient. And so
Right.
just like a general physician, if there's anything wonky about a patient, you send them to a specialist. And so we definitely
Right.
have a niche that we should be practicing in, and the Veterans Administration wants to increase that, and I'm all for it.
Yeah, I think that's fabulous. I didn't realize that it was so low of a percentage throughout the United States. I guess because I've always practiced in states where um, we do have those mid-level providers, and quite frequently, when I worked med surge, we have both NPs, nurse practitioners, and who help on the internal medicine team with the internists, and so that's just something that I'm very accustomed to, and I agree. I think they provide excellent patient care, and they do like work in collaboration with the physicians, and so if there's ever a question or anything that they need specialty, or even just sound ideas, then they have that physician team to rely on. But I think it when I noticed when they started bringing those people in, it made such a difference in our internist patient load, and it made it a lot more attainable. And I think we have better patient outcomes because of that, because they're not so rushed and they're not so pressed for time. They can spend more time individually with their patients, which of course the patients love. So,
Right. And it's just safer for patients. I worked with a physician for a while that, I mean, sometimes he would see like 25 to 30 patients, and I've heard all the way up to 40 patients in one day in the clinic.
yeah, yeah,
That is crazy.
yeah.
So
That's just, yeah,
he wants a advanced practice nurse to work with him to take off some of
oh,
that
I'm
load.
sure. Well, and we, you see both sides of the camp there. You see some physicians that are very accepting of mid-levels, and others that, are a little more, they're biased towards a PA or maybe towards an NP. And then there's those that just don't want to work with them whatsoever. And so I'm sure that's a huge hurdle to overcome as well,
Right.
is,
I mean,
the
you have
meeting
to
of the
follow the
minds.
money, and they're just worried. They're protecting, of course, the patients, but really they're not protecting them from anything because it's been shown time and time again that it's safe. And
Right.
no state that's like given full practice of authority has ever taken it away because it
Right,
works and
because of
it's
it.
fine. But the money's a huge thing, and that's where it's at right now. And
I
nurse,
no, I honestly I could see that. I will say honestly that there's some physicians that I work with who are not opposed, but don't prefer not to work with the NPs or the PAs. And I don't think, I've got one that comes to mind where it is not a money thing with that particular provider. It's just plain personal preference, and I think a lack of confidence. I don't in the mid levels ability. I don't know if there's anything legitimate that backs that up, if they had a bad experience, or maybe just the way that that provider had been trained. But I think we'd be naive not to say that money, I'm sure, does play a role in it, even though it would be such a great relief to them. So,
yeah. So I am hoping that these rules the VA has put in place will be permanent because I think it's great. I think it's
right,
really weird that in Idaho I could prescribe whatever and take care of patients, but I come to Texas, which has different rules. I can't even prescribe a Tylenol to somebody, which is over the counter. Like it just blows
right.
my mind. Like it's very weird, and I hope that this is a beginning of. This is why the medical lobbyists are fighting against this VA rule so much because pretty soon in Houston, a nurse practitioner can take care of a patient independently and right down the street another one can't, or even if they work at two different hospitals it's going to be totally a disparity. So
Right.
there, it's opening the door and I'm like, kick it wide open.
Just busted off the hinges.
Oh
Well, here's hoping. Here's hoping. That
well,
could bring some
thanks.
really great things.
Oh yes, so thanks for joining me, stat sister.
Absolutely. Stat sister. You're welcome. It's a pleasure.
It was great. So I'm gonna turn off. Let's. Okay. So thanks to the audience. Thank you,
Oh, yes.
Lisa,
Thank you.
Sarah.
Ryan.
Right. Yeah.
All the people who are listening.
And if anyone has found their way to our podcast, thank you. And you can, oh, that's America saying hello. So you can follow us on Twitter at Stat Sisters and send us your questions so that we can ask real questions from real people at
We
some
would love
point.
that.
Okay, well, we'll see you next time.
All right. Bye.